The final current asset item that we want to discuss is inventory, and so this section concerns inventory management. Inventory for a manufacturer typically has three basic categories: raw materials, the items that are going to be turned into finished goods later, work in process, where the raw materials are in some stage of production, and finally finished goods, which are ready to be sold to a potential customer. Now, we have all these types of inventory. The amount of inventory, though, that we're going to have at any given point in time is affected by a number of factors. One, how much we expect to sell, what sort of production method we use. If we use a level production in a seasonal business, let's think about Santa, who is going to deliver toys in December. If the elves are producing 1/12 of the toys every month, well, we're going to have a great deal of inventory for a long period of time. That if something's generated in January, it's going to sit there in stock for the rest of the year. So the amount of inventory we have really depends on whether or not we're going to have our elves working every month, an equal amount, or whether or not we're going to give them a few months off, lay off some elves in January through June, and then bring them in and have them working overtime in order to get everything ready for the December rush. Now, obviously, this is just an analogy, but the point is that companies have to consider this exact same issue. Inventories are really the least liquid of the current assets. Even though we might think of these as items that we are trying to sell, we are going to have to, in many cases, wait for the customer to show up before we will sell this. So as a relatively illiquid asset, if the customers don't show up, we might have to discount very aggressively to get rid of these, to get rid of our inventory. It's expected that the inventory will have the highest yield. In other words, it's going to be a more profitable investment than our receivables are, certainly more profitable than a highly liquid investment like marketable securities. We've talked about Santa's production schedule, so let's just make a point of the level versus seasonal production. Level production allows for the maximum efficiency in manpower or machinery used, so we don't have people sitting around not working. We don't have machines that aren't being utilized. We sort of use them throughout the course of the year. But if we do that, we are likely to have high inventories build up, particularly in our seasonal business such as Santa's. Having said that, the alternative is seasonal production, and that eliminates the inventory buildup problem, but it might result in machinery and workers not being used very efficiently. So when we do ramp up production, we may end up having to pay overtime wages, and we might find ourselves without enough capacity to produce as much as we would like. So this idea of level production versus seasonal production, that's going to influence how much inventory we have, and we're going to have to sort of make these decisions in concert with other parts of the organization. A current asset like marketable securities, finance people probably make that decision without any outside input. For inventory, we're going to need input from the marketing people and from the production people to come to some agreement as to how much production makes sense at any given point in time. Let's consider a relatively simple inventory decision model, and by this we mean we're going to look at a model where we make a decision as to how much inventory to carry at any point in time, and how often to order new inventory, And really it's going to depend on, to start with, in our most basic method, two things. It's going to depend on what the cost is of carrying a particular item in inventory. And so what are those costs? Well, we're going to have interest on funds that are tied up in inventory. So if we have $20,000 of inventory, we probably have to borrow $20,000 to buy that, or we have to ask our shareholders to provide the $20,000. In either event, whether the bank or our shareholders expect a return on that money. So there's going to be an interest cost. That's a carrying cost. If we could operate without any inventory, that would be best of all, but in many cases we can't. So we're going to be concerned with that interest on the funds tied up in the inventory. The second thing is there actually is a cost to the warehouse space. We may have to pay insurance premiums in case there were a fire, say, in our warehouse. There are going to be costs of handling the product. And then there's the third item that we list here, which is implicit, is if we're holding inventory, some of it's going to spoil perhaps, or it might be perishable. Others might be obsolete. So, groceries might be perishable, but computer equipment might become obsolete in a hurry. In either case, that's a cost of just holding on to inventory. Now, we might want to have inventory as low as possible, but if we do that, we've also got to be concerned with ordering costs. So we can keep inventories at a low level if we are just constantly replenishing our inventory from our suppliers, but there are costs associated with ordering. So if every day we get new inventory to stock, there's the cost of actually stocking it. There's shipping costs. Shipping dozens of small orders is more expensive than shipping one really large order to us. So really what the company is going to try to do is to balance these inventory carrying costs against the inventory ordering costs. That's really what we're going to, this picture sort of describes what the effort is. As the order size gets larger, the cost of ordering gets smaller. That's this graph right here. But we have we have very large orders. The overall cost per unit of ordering gets smaller and smaller. Having said that, because we're making very large, getting very large deliveries, we're going to have from time to time very high levels of inventory, and the carrying costs are going to be higher if we're only placing a few orders throughout the course of the year. So what we are attempting to do is to balance these two costs. And so how might that be balanced? Well, if we have smaller ordering sizes back here and more of them, our carrying costs will be low, but our ordering costs are very high. When we order in larger blocks, our carrying costs are going up, but our ordering costs are going down. There is a magic point at which those two costs perfectly balance, and at that point we're going to minimize our total costs. And so when we talk about minimizing our total costs, what we really mean is if we add that amount right there to this amount, okay, those two amounts added together give us the black line. Okay, so we're just stacking them on top of one another, and we minimize at this point where the ordering costs and the carrying costs are equal, where the per unit ordering and carrying costs are equal. So let's look at this mathematically as well. How do we find M? Well, in this simple model, we can use something referred to as the economic ordering quantity. And the economic ordering quantity depends upon the sales levels that we have, S, sales levels in units, the ordering costs for each order, how much does it cost to place an order, and the carrying cost per unit in dollars. If our sales are 2,000 units, the ordering cost is $8 and the carrying cost is 20 cents per unit, we just plug those in, do a little math, and we come to an economic ordering quantity of 400 units. Now that happens to be, let's back up here. That happens to be what we saw right here. So we've picked numbers that allow us to derive an economic ordering quantity that exactly matches the graph that we have right here. So let's go forward from here. So that, before we go on, again, economic ordering quantity balances the cost of the ordering versus the carrying costs. Balances order costs versus carrying costs. Now we might be concerned about the potential for safety stock or for stockouts. A stockout occurs when the firm runs out of inventory and is unable to make deliveries or to sell the product. Obviously, this can be somewhat disastrous. You miss a sale. You might miss a sale, and your customer might go to one of your competitors and not come back. So most firms would prefer to have relatively low probabilities that they're actually going to run out of the product that they're trying to sell. With that in mind, they may wish to hold a safety stock. So a safety stock is additional inventory that you don't expect to sell but is there just in case you have unusually high purchases at some point, and unusually high level of sales. Now this increases the cost of the inventory because of the carrying costs. You've got to carry this safety stock even though you don't expect to sell it at any given point in time. But what's the benefit? Well, the benefit is that you hope to eliminate stockouts and the lost profits that arise from that. And if you get lucky, you'll actually have increased profits from some unexpected orders where you're able to sell off that safety stock. And then you'll go out and repurchase additional inventory, including restocking that safety stock element. So let's consider our economic order quantity again, where we have a safety stock. So let's imagine that our economic order quantity is 400 units, but we decide we need a safety stock of 50 units. Well, given an economic order quantity of 400 units without a safety stock, we would expect that when new inventory comes in, we have 400 units available, and just a few seconds before the next inventory comes in, we're down to 0. And instead, we want to only be down to 50. So what we will discover is that our average inventory, if we have no safety stock, the average inventory would just be the economic order quantity divided by 2, and we would have 0 at the low point and the economic order quantity of 400 at the high point in inventory. On average, we would have 200. If we also incorporate safety stock, the average inventory is the economic order quantity over 2 plus the safety stock. So in this case, we're going to order in groups of 400. That means on average we would have 200 that we think we're going to sell at any given period, but we're going to give ourselves a cushion of 50, and so our average inventory is going to increase by 50 50 units, and so our carrying cost is going to go up. The total carrying cost we'll have now 250 units, and maybe this isn't clear, let's make it clear. The average inventory is going to be 250 units. Okay, the carrying cost is going to be that average inventory multiplied by the carrying cost per unit, or we're going to have a carrying cost of $50 using this economic order quantity of 400 units with a safety stock of 50 units. Now, you may have heard of just-in-time inventory management. Just-in-time systems really are compatible with this economic order quantity that we have been looking at. What makes just-in-time work is that advances in communications, coordination have allowed companies to really drive down the ordering costs, which means they can order more often and keep a lot less inventory on hand. Now, in order for a just-in-time inventory system to work, you need a number of attributes to be in place. You need quality production that continually satisfies the customer's requirement or the manufacturer's requirement. You need close ties between the suppliers, manufacturers, and customers, and all of this leads to minimizing the level of inventory that's required at the point where just-in-time manufacturing is being, or just-in-time inventory management is being utilized. Now, there are a number of cost savings from having lower inventory, and it's been estimated that just-in-time inventory management has reduced inventory to sales ratios by over 10% over the last decade. There are a number of advantages. One, if you don't have inventory, you don't have to have space in your warehouse. So not only do you have less invested in the inventory, you also have less money invested in the space that housed the inventory. There are going to be lower costs of overhead for utilities, as well as probably for manpower to move things in and out of raw materials. And a lot of these advances have been driven by, well, think the internet, by systems that allow companies to integrate their purchasing, production, sales in a way that they can coordinate very carefully when items are going to be delivered and when they're going to be sold, and avoid stockouts. So essentially we've just gotten better in many cases at managing this. In addition, just-in-time also is associated with improved quality control. In fact, it won't work very well if you don't have fairly high quality control. Likewise, the elimination of waste. Now, there are some disadvantages. One is the integration costs. If you have a supplier that is supplying your product on a just-in-time basis, they need to know when you need it. There are costs of just creating computer systems that communicate that information on a continuing basis. Likewise, if there's a parts shortage, if there's a shortage of an item in a just-in-time system, the whole plant can end up being shut down. Imagine that you have a just-in-time system in which a component is being brought in on a truck, and that truck has an accident. There's a wreck. Well, waiting on one particular part might mean that the entire plant has to be shut down because there's no safety stock. So the lack of safety stock means that if you have an unforecast increase in sales, that's a big problem. You can't keep up with the demand. Likewise, if there's an unforecast decrease in sales, inventory can pile up, and you may not have a place that's well suited to handling that inventory. So while if you think about, for example, auto manufacturers, they're sort of renowned for developing just-in-time systems. Having said that, when auto sales are poor, even though the autos get shipped out of the plant, they may sit out in the parking lot, or they may sit at dealers' parking lots for months at a time. Likewise, if there's an unexpected increase in sales, as there was during a period when the U.S. government had what was known as the cash for clunkers deal, which was, I believe, in 2009. In a cash for clunkers period, companies literally ran out of inventory. They just didn't have enough to sell. So even though they had a just-in-time system, the just-in-time system couldn't deal with periods of very high demand or very low demand. In each case, eventually production schedules had to be reworked. Also, if, for example, one of your suppliers goes on strike, well, that's a tremendous problem for everybody up and down the supply chain. So those are concerns that you have when you move to a just-in-time system.